Hello, everyone, and welcome again to Leaders Uncut. It's so great to have you here, all of you. And if it's your first time, I interview extraordinary leaders, innovators that are changing our world. And today we have just like that, one of them. His name is Scott Hollrah, and he is the founder and CEO of Venn Technology. Hello, Scott. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me, Catherine. It's good to be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming over here at Leaders Uncut. So my God, what you're doing with Venn Technology, it's quite amazing. You are eliminating manual processes. You are making siloed information accessible. And then you also enable organizations wide real-time sharing of information to keep every department and customer in the loop, up to date and on the same page. So I'm going to hand it over to you. Maybe you can start by giving us a little bit of your background and explain the reason why you launched Venn Technology and what your vision is. How about that?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to. I have had an entrepreneurial spirit my entire life. And I can remember as a 5 or 6 year old kid riding around in the car with my dad, and we'd bounce business ideas back and forth. And that's just kind of always been there. Fast forward to college, I can distinctly remember one of my upper level marketing classes, and we had the speaker come in and talk about what it was like to run a business. And I knew at that moment that eventually I wanted to run a company, and considered all kinds of things over the years. And when I was with my previous firm, before I went off on my own, I just had this realization one day after a meeting with a client that I was good at what I do. I loved what I did. And I thought that I could find a way to feed my family doing it. And so took about a year and a half to seek wise counsel, pray about it, and most importantly, get my wife on board. That's a whole other story in and of itself. But launched Venn in January of 2015. This year, we crossed the 10-year mark, and it's been a heck of a ride. In the early days, I would have said that we were a Salesforce.com consulting firm that did integration work. And over the years, we've really kind of flipped that and evolved to where we're an integration firm that does Salesforce work. I think talking about what you do is important, but talking about why you do it is at least as important, if not more important. And for a long time, we've talked about how our goal is to get that controller, CFO, somebody in the finance department who's just burnt out from, burning the candle at both ends. We want to free them to focus on what they're best at, so that they can get to their kids' soccer game or whatever the kids' soccer game is for them in their life. And not too long ago, I actually came across a study from 2018 that said in the last year, 38%, almost 40% of parents had missed one or more significant events in the life of their child because of work, and 20% had missed 3 or more. And I truly believe in my core that automation and integration of systems is something that can free those people so that they can be there for those important moments in the lives of their kids, their loved ones, that happens outside of the office. So that's why we get up and do what we do every day.
It's a beautiful thing, and I love the fact that you're coming back to the essential values of the family, what is critical, that we have to be here for our children, that work should not take space for replacing everything that we're doing. It is unhealthy. So that's a great vision, and obviously you've done a good job. You've been here for 10 years. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Venn specializes in integrating finance and CRM systems, right? Why is this intersection so critical for businesses nowadays?
Yeah. So over time, it's really evolved beyond just CRM and finance. And so really any line of business application that needs to connect to your ERP or to any other line of business application, that's where we come in and we bridge those gaps. And so the reality is, companies have more and more systems, and we live in a world where there are a few applications out there that are kind of a one, does everything, but oftentimes they do a few things really well, but everything else, they just kind of check the box. They don't do it that great. And so that creates the need for a company to bring in, a Salesforce or a HubSpot for CRM, that they need an e-commerce platform. They need something to help them collect payments online. And it doesn't make sense for people in a world where we have rich, robust APIs. It doesn't make sense for people to spend their days exporting data from one system and manipulating it in Excel and praying and hoping that when they import that everything, comes in the way that it should. And so not only is it time consuming, it's not a good use of people's time, but it's also error prone, and it also creates lags in data visibility across the organization. And so we really help solve all those problems through the automated movement of data across these applications.
Understood. So can you talk about the process? Because I'm sure lots of people are asking themselves that question. How does it work? How long does it take to put that transition? Because I think it is a transition together. And also, how do you identify when you speak with a company where a company's tech is underperforming?
Yeah. So there's a lot to unpack there. And so talking first about, how long does it take? Some of our offerings can be stood up in a matter of weeks. Others might take several months. And then depending on the full scope of a project, you could be many months into, a year plus. I'd say most of our projects are done in about 90 days. And a lot of it has to do with the number of systems, the complexity of the systems, complexity of their requirements. One of the most critical things that we've got to have coming into this is, and I say I mean this more in the collective sense, the client has to have a really good understanding of what they want their process to be in the future. I can't tell you how many times we'll get into a workshop to define the requirements for the solution. And if there's 3 people from the client in the room, the first person will say, well, here's how it needs to work. And then the next person will say, well, no, it needs to work like this. And then the third person will say, you're both wrong. It needs to do this. And so making sure that they're on the same page across the organization with all those stakeholders to ensure that they understand what the process needs to be for it to be most efficient is really critical. And I think the other question that you asked was, how do you know where to start? You've got all these applications in the stack. And I firmly believe that it doesn't make sense to try to boil the ocean right out of the gate. I think that where we need to start is which one of these systems is causing the most pain for you. And our mentality going into every new customer is, I don't need to try to sell you the world. Let us get in and do that first project, and you're going to see how good our team is at solving these problems. And then we'll take on that next most painful and the next most painful and so on.
Yeah, and that makes sense. But also one thing I would imagine can be a little bit sensitive is when you work with people that maybe have been using the same type of processes for a certain amount of time, then you're coming and you're challenging them, questioning the full efficiency of their process. So that's sensitive because it's almost like pointing out their weakness. So how do you deal with this?
People naturally fight change. And if I'm being honest, I fight change too. And so in order for a project like this to be successful, not only do you have to have your processes or your desired future state really dialed in, people have to be willing to change. And I'll be honest, I've been in the technology space for the overwhelming majority of my career, over 20 years. And I've seen some people fight the change so hard that they ended up saying, I'm going to make a change of a different kind, and went and found different kinds of work. And so at the end of the day, if you're not willing to embrace the change, and if you can't actually visualize that future state and what your world is going to be like, and that it's going to be better, it's going to be pushing a boulder uphill.
It is, and especially nowadays with AI and all these emerging tech that are out there, I would imagine companies typically have leaders that should be smart enough to see what's going on in the environment with their competitors as well, and realize, oh my God, it is time definitely to have at least a clearer picture as to what's going on, how can we become more efficient, and what systems should we look at in order to remain not only relevant but competitive, right?
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah. So who is you, or who are your ideal clients, Scott? Who do you really like to work with?
Yeah. It's fairly broad, and it's probably easier to talk about where we don't like to play. And so I normally tell people we play in the mid market, and everybody kind of defines the mid market a little bit different. The overwhelming majority of our customers are doing probably between 20 and 200 million in revenue. We certainly have clients that are bigger. We certainly have clients that are smaller, but that's kind of where we find our sweet spot. When you get too small, they typically don't have the types of systems and don't have the type of budget needed to, do one of these projects. And then on the larger side, one of the things that actually kind of pushed me to go off on my own was that I personally get a lot more joy and satisfaction of working with smaller clients, where I feel like you actually get to see the impact of the work that you're doing. Mm-hmm. With my previous firm, it was a wonderful company, and we worked with great companies. But I worked on more than one project where a customer spent hundreds of thousands, if not into the low millions of dollars, and got to the end of it and just shelved the project. They just decided not to do it. And that's really defeating. And so, we really get to see the impact of the work that we do. So we're very squarely, we don't work in what I would consider the enterprise type space. I mean, we have a handful of clients that fit in that, but it's not how we necessarily go to market. And then from an industry standpoint, it's pretty broad too. We don't do a whole lot in construction or manufacturing. But given the nature of some of the products that we integrate with frequently and them moving in that direction, I think that we'll start to see more business that way. Okay. And then geographically, the bulk of our clients are in North America, and with that, mostly the US, but we do have a handful of clients in Europe and Australia.
Okay. All right. So from what you have seen, you've been doing this now for 10 years. I have two questions for you. How long does it take for a typical company to see change, to see a real evolution within their systems, and the results that are the consequences of that evolution itself? And second, how do you see your systems and what you're doing really impacting the economy in general? I think that would be interesting to understand that too.
Yeah. So in terms of how long it takes for people to see value, again, in tech, it really depends. But I would say that the bulk of our clients start to see some value in as little as a month. And I'd say that 80% or more see value within 3 months. And then again, depending on the level of the project, the sophistication of the systems, it could be, many, many more months stacked upon that. But given the size of organizations that we typically serve, we can come in and we can dial things in pretty quickly so that they can get value really fast. Whereas, and again, kind of going back to where I get joy in working with these really large companies, you might spend 6 months in legal just trying to get the project, contracting approved. And so if you're spending that long in legal, it may be years before the systems actually come online and people start to see value. So there's no one size fits all in the tech space.
I can imagine, but that could be also an issue. I mean, people have companies have to act so much faster now, don't you think? I mean, if you have to wait 6 months in legal, that in itself is a challenge, is a problem, isn't it?
Without a doubt. And that's just the nature of large organizations. And, typically there's multiple steering committees and multiple levels of internal sign off even before it gets to legal. So, again, my heart is really in the mid market where we can move a lot quicker and really see the impact.
Yeah, no, this is right. So typically you have a team that's going to work with you, of course, I imagine, and that is interacting with the client on a consistent basis, correct?
Yeah. And I would say that the vast majority of our projects, we're going to have at least one meeting a week. Well, let me back up. So after the client signs off on, doing the project with us, we then do an internal handoff from our sales team to what we call our delivery team, which is our consultants. They're the ones that are actually, hands on the keyboard, getting these things put together. And so after that internal handoff, then we'll introduce them to the end customer. And from there, we'll get into a series of workshops where we take the things that we learned in the sales process that are more kind of 30,000 foot level, and we get much closer to the ground once the consultants get in there and start documenting at a detailed level what the requirements are. Okay. And then once we get sign off and both parties are in agreement that yes, in fact, these are the requirements. And then from there, we start to actually build out the solution. And typically once we get to that point, we're meeting with the client once a week, talking about here's the progress, here's a demo, give them the opportunity to make some subtle changes. We're not going to go, start over and rebuild the whole thing from scratch, but, hey, do we need to add some fields? Do we need to change some mappings? Do we need to move the screens around a little bit? That sort of thing. And then over the course of, a month to 3 months, typically we're handing it off to them to test the systems for themselves. And then once they sign off on that, we push it into the production environments and off they go.
Perfect. So it's pretty smooth.
Most of the time.
Yeah, of course. I mean, doing something like this is never easy, but I think it's so critical. And I have seen that problem in many, many companies. So I'm not surprised that they would need someone like you to help simplify this, streamline everything, and also make sure that everything that is in the software, in the systems, is properly used. Because I would imagine, I've seen that in average, maybe people use 20% or 30% of the software, right?
And, with some of the systems that we use, I'll call out Salesforce, for example. Yeah. Salesforce is so incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
And I wholeheartedly agree. The vast majority of organizations on Salesforce are using 20% of what it could do for them. And I think a lot of organizations, they may have the need, but they don't have the understanding of what the tools are capable of.
Yeah.
And without somebody from the outside that is able to see the big picture and really knows how to stitch the parts of it together, they just can't conceive that their problem can be solved. And more often than not, it can.
It can. Yeah, I know. But I think most of the time people say, I'm too busy. I don't have time to look into this, into more details, or I hate manuals. I hate to dig into this. It's too complicated. So they don't do it. That's as simple as that.
We settle for the status quo and keep going.
Yeah, and then it's too bad because those software are so expensive, and so they're not optimized. They're not optimized unless you have someone like you who comes in and shows them the quick way of taking advantage of all these capabilities that are just game changer for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. All right, Scott, this is great. I'm so excited that you were able to explain the value that you're bringing to companies like that very often don't even realize all the potential that they are not taking advantage of with something that is costing them dearly.
Yeah. We spend a lot on tools, and a lot of it just doesn't get used to the maximum potential. And we love helping people see what they could do to free their time and focus on what they're best at.
Oh, that's great. All right. So now you've been an entrepreneur for quite a while. If you had one advice to give to people who are thinking about starting their own business because they are expert in their field, what would that advice be, Scott?
I think that there are a lot of people that sit and think and have tons and tons of great ideas, and fear holds them back from ever actually acting on them. And I think that the fears are not necessarily universal, but some level of fear keeps people from taking that step. Yeah. And I will say, I don't think that everybody is cut out to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody with a great idea is cut out to be an entrepreneur, but a lot more people are cut out for it than give themselves credit for. And so get the input of wise counsel, the people that you trust, validate your ideas, and take the risk, bet on yourself.
Yeah, that's good advice. And eventually you're going to have to jump into the unknown, because if you don't, you'll never be able to do anything. I also believe that we have been so constrained in a way, in society, in a certain way of working, right? The 9-to-5 typical job. And that's the way it should be because it brings you security. But the bottom line, there's no security anymore. Look at what's happening because of AI. All these layoffs, I mean, where's the security there? So I think having that entrepreneurial spirit is a new way to be, and you have to re-educate yourself in thinking differently, in having a different type of perspective, because it can develop freedom. It also gives you better control over your life in general.
I want to double click on that for a second. I mean, just talking about different, and again, I think that a lot of entrepreneurs think about things differently. They look at things differently. They think about business differently and how it should be done. And one of the things that I have enjoyed the most about my entrepreneurial journey is the fact that nobody can tell me that I have to do it this way, except for maybe the IRS. But, in our office, most days we're based in Dallas, and most days I'm literally in shorts and flip flops in the office, and that's different, right? We have a physical office. We're not remote. We don't work from home, and I want to come into the office, relaxed and comfortable as can be, and that's not common in the workplace. And with our marketing, we have so much fun. We're different. The bulk of the work that we do is in the world of accounting software. I'll say that again, accounting software. It doesn't get nerdier than that.
Yeah.
And so we can go to these conferences, and we come in, we have a life-size Yeti as a mascot, and we bring a mannequin, and we've got this costume, and we could be in the forgotten dark corner of the expo hall, and we will have the longest line of anyone there because we're different. We're not afraid to put ourselves out there and be different. And another thing I would tell people is embrace that. Whatever your different is, embrace it and flaunt it, and don't be afraid of the market. If that's really who you are, be that.
Oh, this is so beautiful, and I'm so glad you mentioned this, because like I said, so many people have been told you can't do this. You cannot be that what you think you are because it's not serious enough, right? You have to fit in the mold, but what happens if you fit in the mold? You become invisible.
Right.
So you have to embrace who you are, the essence of who you are. Be authentic. I always say there's nothing like authenticity right now, especially because of AI. You have to be as real as possible, even if you show that you're not perfect, because nobody is, but your flaws are actually attractive. So let it be, let it go, let be the complete you, and not be scared of what others think, because just like you said, this is why people notice you, because you just go for it, right?
Yeah. Exactly. The number of times, especially in the early days, we'd be sitting around talking about marketing ideas, and somebody, usually me, would say, "Oh my gosh, I have a terrible idea." and we would throw it out there, and then the next thing you know, we're doing whatever that terrible idea was, and we've amped it up to 11, and just run with it, and it has served us really, really well.
I love it. Oh my God, thank you. I'm so glad that you mentioned all of this, because I really want to encourage people to just be like that, and not live in fear. Just explore, take risks, go for it. What do you risk anyway? What do you risk, really? Somebody laughing at you? That's great. They'll remember you at least, right?
Right, exactly.
That's the key to marketing. You have to do something to be remembered. And of course, if you do this, you have to deliver on the other side. You have to deliver the right services with the certain level of quality, and deliver what you promise. That also is, of course, has to be part of the whole picture.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Scott. It was so great. So if someone wants to get hold of you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, visit our website, venntechnology.com, VENN, like a Venn diagram, venntechnology.com. We'd love to help. You'll see our Yeti out there. His name is Bjorn. Give him a wave, and he'll pop up on the screen.
No, I can't wait to go and meet him. My God, it makes me want to work with you here. That would be amazing. So anyway, thank you again, Scott. I appreciate very much your time today with us at Leaders Uncut.
Thank you.
Everyone else, thank you so much for watching. Please share this video of Scott and everything that he had to talk about, and also share what he can do with his company Venn by automating manual workflows, so that you can really focus on what you can do best, and maybe you will find certain levels of interactions or capabilities in the systems that you had no idea existed, and can save you hours in your life and give you the time to go watch your son or daughter play softball or football, and maybe go have a dinner with your husband or wife and take the time to live life a little bit. This type of help is essential and is a game changer for companies, because it will make companies also a lot more competitive, a lot more efficient, and streamline everything that they're doing. So again, share this video. You may have someone who needs exactly what Venn Technology is offering, and we have to help each other out, communicate great things like that. And would appreciate if you would subscribe to my channel and give it a like if you like it. And we will see you next time.